What is up, TMZers, or whatever it is that I'm calling you? It is time for the first ever TMZ exclusive interview. No, not with Lindsay Lohan. It's time for an exclusive TMZ interview with the one and only Max Andrew Dubinsky. I found his blog several months ago, I believe it was in January, and just devoured everything he's written. He's got his paperback book of short stories called We Can't Go Home Again. He's got his blog, Make It Mad, and he's also got a serialized novel coming out called Dislocated. So I'm going to talk to him about all of those things, and yeah, I hope you'll check him out, and hope you enjoy this TMZ exclusive. Max Andrew Dubinsky is most likely living on the road right now with his wife and a cactus, or unemployed somewhere in California. He believes in God and Bigfoot and fears sharks in all water situations. And there he is, Max Andrew Dubinsky. Thanks, man, for just taking the time to do this for me.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me here in this alleyway. We Can't Go Home Again. It was just an ebook, and now it's in paperback with an additional story, right?
That's correct.
Right. Do you have like a favorite story, or is it kind of like your children, where they're like all your favorite, or you love them all equally?
I definitely have a favorite. I think 31 Days of May.
That is my favorite, actually.
Is a favorite of mine. It's one of the more, I feel like, depressing subject matters that I tackle in the book, but it's also one that's not talked about very often.
Yeah.
It just really resonates with me. It's a very personal story about a young man whose struggle with sexuality and with pornography really causes a lot more destruction than I think most of us are aware that pornography can cause. And it really sends a riff with his family, with his friends, and it really, really causes a tragedy. But there's so much hope at the end of the story, and there's definitely a common theme of hope, and the wisdom about God and church and life is so wonderfully and hopelessly lost on him that he's given from friends that he makes on his journey. So it's a real personal story, and it's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, it definitely hit me the hardest out of all. That one and the last one.
Things Just Fall Apart.
Things Just Fall Apart, yeah. That one hit me really hard as well.
That's another favorite of mine as well. I wrote that story after a breakup that I had, and I just used the energy of the turmoil, I think, of that relationship, and that's where that story got birthed from.
Awesome.
And it's usually a lot of people who read We Can't Go Home Again, that story seems to be the one they have the most problem with. A lot of people think that it's a very hopeless ending to a book that's all about forgiveness and redemption, but the last line of that story is "You're going to be okay." A lot of people will take that as incredibly depressing and hopeless, and some people see it as like this is the common thread throughout the entire book, is like you're going to be okay no matter how bad it gets.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why I also like that story a lot.
Yeah, I probably read it all like in a night and a half, because I just kind of like associated with like every single character. Like they felt like they were real people. Do they kind of all come from personal experiences, or are they just straight up from your imagination, just kind of you came up with them out of nowhere?
I think as a fiction writer, I draw all my characters from some personality trait that I'm aware of, from whether someone I've met or my own personality. I think all those characters in the story are based off of an interaction I've had with someone before, but they're of course no one in particular.
Right.
As a writer, I think when you write fiction, there's always some truth
for
all
sure.
the fiction that you write. So
yeah, well, I highly recommend it. It's in paperback now, so it's awesome.
$5 on Amazon.
$5 on Amazon. You cannot beat that.
For the ebook. It's pretty great.
There you go. Awesome. Shifting gears, you have this amazing blog called Make It Mad. Mad, of course, because you're either insane or it's your initials, one of those. Yeah.
It's a
little bit of both, probably. Yeah. I discovered you on. You actually wrote a guest post on People of the Second Chance, and that's how I found you. And I read that post and just clicked over to Make It Mad, and probably read your whole blog maybe in a couple days. So yeah, how about kind of just describe how you started your blog, what led into starting the blog, and how you write just kind of with such openness.
Make It Mad I never intended it to be what it is today. It started just on a whim. My sister, I would always send her emails just recounting really crazy tales that I experienced in traveling across the country and living in LA, and I've always just worked really odd jobs. I've always met a really interesting cast of characters in my life, and And she was the one who convinced me to start writing a blog. And at the time, I wasn't on Twitter or Facebook. I didn't know what Instagram was or Gmail. I didn't know anything. I just was not online at all. But she was like, hey, stop just sending me these emails. Like, you should compile them and put them in a blog. So that was my intent. I just kind of started Make It Mad to just kind of tell stories. And I really thought no one was going to read them. I mean, I was a nobody. I still am a nobody. But I had... because I had no connection to the internet whatsoever and no real experience on the internet. And it just kind of started to grow. While I was writing it, I was in a major crisis of faith. I was struggling with pornography. I was struggling with God and with the church. And so I just wrote about these struggles, again, with the mindset of, like, no one's going to read this. So I think that's why I was so open about it. And I had a friend who approached me and recommended that I write about what I was struggling with. You know, he said, you're a writer, you have a blog, why don't you just blog about it? That might help you work through some of what you're going through. So I never set out to have the answers on Make It Mad. I never set out to provide any sort of absolute truth. Make It Mad has always been a place where I'm just exploring the answers, and it's always just kind of been my thoughts at the moment about what's going on in life. And I usually just go from there and let people start a great conversation on, like, hey, this is what I learned this week. I don't know if this is truth or what it might be, but it really resonated with me. And it's been great. I think the best part about Make It Mad is the conversations that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the site after I just kind of write about what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
Or what is setting me free.
Yeah, well, you definitely inspire me to write more openly myself on my own blog. So
Thanks.
I appreciate that.
That's
yeah.
great.
One of the things that you blogged about, I guess, last summer was part of your life. You were driving mad across America, right? And
Yeah.
so you're all over the place. So those are some awesome posts of just interacting with people, I guess, that you wouldn't have normally come across. I guess, what was one, if you can just pull out one favorite city or favorite moment, favorite interaction?
That trip across the country was a major catalyst for myself and for Make It Mad. And it's really what Make It Mad became about, as I searched for faith in God outside of the church. And I was here in LA doing that, and I realized I needed to get farther away than just LA, which is what set me across the country. I would say that my favorite experience, or something that really resonated with me, aside from the James Bond villain that I met in Columbus, Ohio, who was a guy who had a piranha tank in his house that he filmed live 24/7 and fed them things. He was by far one of the most interesting people I ever met. And there's two other experiences that were really altering for the course of my life, I think, on that trip. And one of them was a man I met in Savannah, Georgia, named Lenny, who was homeless and chose to be homeless so that he could minister to the homeless and help the homeless out. He chose to live among them and to give them whatever money he had. He reconnected them with family members. He built a community willingly. He just, and for 9 years when I met him, he'd been homeless for 9 years, and just told me his whole story about why he was doing what he was doing, and how he just had no fear of man, and he told me he had no fear of man because he had all his fear in God. So he had no fear of being homeless, no fear of living in this world, because he knows God is not of this world and is something who is worthy to be feared. So that encounter with him and just that selflessness of saying, like, look at this community here in Savannah on the city streets of how many homeless there are, and no one's helping them. So he built friendships with them, built really long relationships, got them to trust him, and would connect them with their family members, would help them get jobs, would help them figure their lives out. And then the other moment was in Spokane, Washington. I met a really, really great guy. His name was Nick Edwards, and he has a blog. He's a writer, and he's living in Taiwan right now. But my encounter with Nick, I was very lost while traveling across the country, really, really struggling with my faith. And Nick took me out to lunch, was very interested in my story and was very interested in why I was so confused and lost about my faith with God and what my purpose was. And thinking I was a big scam, I just didn't really believe in myself. And in his words, he said, I believe that we have a God who's big enough to send you across the country just to impact the life of one person, on the other side of the country. And he said, I just like to think that this isn't about you in any sort of way, that maybe God loves us so much that he would uproot you, send you across the country because this guy who God has intended for you to meet is only going to listen to you, or is only going to hear what you have to say, and you may change the course of his life forever. And thinking in those terms, that God loves us that much, just wrecks you.
Yeah, it changes your perspective. Like the trip's not so much about you, but maybe about the other people.
And that's when I realized, that the trip was not about me at all.
And then finally, I guess what's going on with you right now is you're starting up a serialized novel.
That's correct.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, I've got 2 projects that I'm working on. After the success of We Can't Go Home Again and diverting from nonfiction, which is Make It Mad, to fiction. I've always been a fan of stories. I love stories. I love telling stories, and I particularly love fiction. I love writing fiction, and I love adventure. And I realized that there's a lot of people blogging, and they're blogging the same stuff over and over again. So I decided to take a novel that I wrote that I was going to try to publish, and publish it myself, but publish it in the form of a serialized novel over the course of X amount of weeks in the summer. So once a week, a new portion of the novel will be released, just like a blog post, just like a weekly blog. But it's going to be a novel in a serialized format, and the website you can see that on is called dislocatedexperience.com. And it's the story of a guy who wakes up one morning to find out that he is very, very, very alone, and that something has happened in his town, and that there's something very insidious lurking around outside, and he becomes more and more paranoid that some disaster has befallen the town that he is in. And so it takes place in just one afternoon. It's a mystery and adventure story, but the best part of Dislocated is that you can experience it in 2 ways. You can experience it as a novel, as the written narrative that will be released once a week, but there's also a graphic novel. That's what I found really cool about the website, is that you see all the artwork already starting to, and I assume that there's more artwork on the way. There is.
Well, awesome.
It's you can choose to read it as an illustrated graphic novel, or you can choose to read it as a narrative manuscript. So it's really exciting. Nothing like this has really been done before. And so I'm really excited just to tell this story and just to let people have a great time getting lost for a few weeks this summer. Dislocated.
Yeah, I can't wait for it. It's going to be awesome. Yeah. So that's basically the story of Max Dubinsky, I guess, as it stands right now. So Can't Go Home Again in paperback and ebook, and then Dislocated starting. When does that start? Or is it debatable?
The release date got
sometime
pushed
this
back.
summer.
It was supposed to start this month in May, but we ended up pushing it back. We changed the release schedule a little bit, so it will start at some point this summer.
Awesome.
I'm thinking June or July.
June or July.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, guys.
Thanks so much, Max.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, have a good one.